Yeah, we'll start, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, good evening to everybody. We like to start this webinar with a small quote only we human makes waste that nature cannot digest. Each one of us can make difference. Together we can make the change. With this quote, we like to start this seminar about the bioplastics. I welcome Mr. Mahadev, Mr. Y.V. Raman, and Dr. Sundar Balaji, Mr. Radhakrishna Murthy for this webinar. Over to Mahadev, sir.
Mr. Radhakrishna Murthy, welcome, Mr. Radhakrishna Murthy.
Yeah.
Please.
Good evening, friends and everyone. I would like to extend my warm and welcome to one and all, and the managing committee members also. I feel happy to see your continuous support and delight to meet you all in this webinar forum. The IPI Chennai chapter is intended to do services towards the industry. Would like to do it for you and your support, with your support. I hope you too will support us. Today we are going to see the second part of the last week lecture, value proposition and the market drivers for bio-based and compostable plastics. I hope you have benefited in the last session. Let me see today's lecture also. This is the right time to explore these technologies and for the benefit of each and every members who are all attending this webinar. Now, I welcome our speaker, Dr. Sundar Balakrishnan, Director, Nature Tech India Private Limited. With your permission, I invite D. Balaji, Joint Secretary of IPI Chennai Chapter, to introduce our today's speaker. Welcome, Mr. Balaji. Please introduce Mr. Sundar Balakrishnan. Thank you.
Sir, Mr. Balaji is not there. You can yourself make an introduction.
Yeah. Mr. Sundar Balakrishnan is MD of Nature Tech, Director of Nature Tech India Private Limited, and is having vast knowledge in the biopolymers. And last week you have saw the lot of inputs and in-depth details about the biopolymers. Now this session you are going to listen remaining session of the biopolymers. I request sir to take care of to start working his presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Okay. So I would like to first of all thank IPI once again for giving this opportunity, and thank you for creating this environment where knowledge can be shared, and it's really beneficial for everyone. So we are really grateful to IPI and everyone in the IPI committee for this opportunity. So last week in the presentation, we saw some basics of bioplastics, what was bio-based, and we stopped here at this point of biodegradability. So I'm going to start from here. So what does biodegradability mean? What biodegradability means is, can the microorganisms in the target disposal system, it could be composting, soil, or anaerobic digester, assimilate or utilize the carbon substrate as a food source completely and in a defined time period? And we saw that from the basic polymer chains through different environments, could be soil, compost, wastewater, or aquatic environment. There are several mechanisms of degradation which occur. It could be hydrolytic, oxidative, or enzymatic, to break down these polymer fragments into oligomers, which is, oligomer means it's a lower molecular weight polymer. So you require several oligomer chains to form a polymer. And once it gets broken down to an oligomer, from this phase, do the microorganisms in each of this environment completely assimilate the carbon and convert it into carbon dioxide, water, and cell biomass. This is termed as complete biodegradability. Now, here is very important to understand that if a polymer mechanism of degradation stops in this oligomeric stage, that cannot be construed as fully biodegradable, although this stage could be invisible to a human eyesight. We cannot construe this until there is microbial assimilation. And how do you track microbial assimilation? You track it by evolution of carbon dioxide. So the evolution of carbon dioxide is a direct measure of the biodegradation of the polymer. Now, from the polymer to the oligomer, it is more of a physical degradation. When the molecular weight drops, that is a physical degradation. But when the carbon gets converted to carbon dioxide, it is a biological degradation. So this is the difference, very important to understand, between physical degradation and what is truly biological. And only if all these residues are consumed by the microorganisms as a food and energy source. And how do you know this? This is known by the evolved carbon dioxide in a defined time frame and in a defined disposal environment. You can call something as completely biodegradable. So this is a basic concept of biodegradability. Okay. Now, what do you mean by compostable? Now, we have seen all these words which are floating around in the market. Some people call it oxo-biodegradable. You must have heard of the term photo-biodegradable, enzyme degradable, degradable, biocompostable. So there's a lot of confusion, misinformation, misrepresentation. Now, when you talk of compostability is nothing but a complete microbial assimilation of the product in composting as a disposal environment. Now, when you talk of composting as a disposal environment, what we mean is that composting is a mechanism of treating any organic waste. It could be vegetable waste, food waste, paper, green waste, lawn waste. It is a mechanism by which this organic waste gets converted into value-added manure, and this process is called composting. So any material which integrates with this process and is consumed by the microorganisms in that composting environment as a food source, you call it as compostable, and this has to happen within 180 days. So there is a standard which I will be talking in the next slides. I'll talk a little bit about what that standard essentially is exactly. Okay. Now, this is just a very pictorial representation of biodegradation and composting. And as you can see, essentially, when you have fragmentation, this is the initial framework of any plastic or bioplastic degradation. Is the first thing is the material will fragment. Now, it's very important that in the presence of moisture, heat, and time, this fragmented material gets completely converted into manure. This is just a pictorial representation of the entire compostability process. So now if we were to make it a little bit more easy to understand, look at fragmentation as the biggest circle. So materials in the fragmentation process, materials break down into smaller pieces, And these small pieces maintain the properties of the original material and will not break down further on their own. So what this means is, if you take a material, it is now broken down, and this broken down fragment is not going to break down further on its own. It is, so this entire big circle is called as fragmentation. Now within the fragmentation subset is we have what is called as biodegradation. Now what does biodegradation mean? Materials, so the fragmented materials are then first broken down into smaller pieces by natural process and get converted into further broken down fragments. So from fragmentation, you have a biodegradation. And then comes a further subset, which is compostability, where these materials, which are biodegradable, are further completely assimilated by the microorganisms in a composting facility in 180 days or less to convert all the carbon in the material to carbon dioxide, water, and humic material. This process is compostability. So if you have to understand it in a very simple way, fragmentation is a large pie of which the subset is biodegradation, and then the final complete microbial assimilation comes under composting. So this is a more simpler way to break down the three stages. Now coming to certifications, I had mentioned about this in the last lecture as well. We have ASTM D6400, which is a US certification, and the standard is ASTM D6400. It's the certificate is given by the Biodegradable Products Institute, BPI, in the US. The same or equivalent certification to ASTM D6400 is EN 13432, which is a Europe-based certification, and this is given by TUV Austria. And we have an AS 4736, which is the Australian Bioplastic Association, ABA, and ISO 17088 is a combination of, or it is like a mother certification which encompasses most of the components in all these certifications. Now in India, the Indian government follows a standard called ISO 17088, which is very similar to ISO 17088. So the Indian government follows this norm. Now, what encompasses this certification? What are the key points? There are essentially three basic components. The first one is called biodegradation or mineralization, which means in no more than 180 days, 90% of the organic carbon must be utilized by the microorganisms to form carbon dioxide when compared to a positive control of cellulose. This is the first stage in the standard. The second point in the standard is a disintegration, which means after 12 weeks, no more than 10% of the product's original dry weight should remain after sieving on a 2 millimeter sieve. So what this essentially, the reason they put this is, let us say you take something like an aluminum foil. Now an aluminum foil contains no carbon. So which means you will meet the mineralization methodology, because the mineralization or this first step is only for the carbon content in the material. So, but the reason they also put in the disintegration is so that if does the material get assimilated into a form which is non-distinguishable, or does it keep lying out in patches? So this is what the disintegration test does. If you have, let us say, a metallized structure, let's say like a metallized film or an aluminum foil laminated with a compostable film, does the product get disintegrated after sieving on a 2 millimeter sieve? You should not have more than 10%. So this is the second component in the standard. And the third and important component is there should be no adverse impact on the ability of the compost made from the product which is biodegraded to support plant growth. What we mean by this is there is heavy metal criteria. Heavy metal in the product should be less than 50%, and then there is a germination rate which has to be compared. So there is a test where they grow a plant. It's called a plant toxicity test, where they grow plants made from regular compost and compost made from this material, and there should be no adverse impact. So these are the three main areas of the standards, which is today there. And typically, compostable products integrate very well with zero waste initiatives. So what do we mean by zero waste initiatives? So fundamentally, composting as an infrastructure was created not to handle plastics. It was mainly created to handle food waste and organic waste. So the way initially people used to get all this food waste in plastic bags, and composting, which is an industry by itself, the composters had to understand, now what do we do with this plastic once I put the food waste into the composting setup? So there were two challenges. One, what do I need to do? What do I do with the plastic? The second, there was also a certain hygiene issue in handling the food waste. No one likes to, at a garbage dump yard, no one likes to take the plastic bag, dump the food waste out and throw the plastic bag. So now there is a hygiene issue. This is what instigated the industry to create products which are also compostable and which compost at the same rates as conventional food waste. So this is where compostable liner bags came into existence. And now the compostable liner bags could be used to collect all the organic waste and directly put it into composting. So that way you need not have to separate the food waste from the bag. And second, you don't need to worry about how do you dispose of the bag, because it's going to get composted in the same rates. So compostable plastics came into existence not because of an issue in plastics. It is only because they aid better in organic waste diversion, which means when we use a compostable plastic to collect all the organic waste, it helps in improving efficiencies of collection and efficiency of conversion into compost. If this were not to happen, then some part of this material would either end up in a landfill, or it could be, let's say, incinerated, or it could just be thrown out, which is not a good medium for disposal. So compostable bags are a medium for zero waste solutions. Then what happened is, once people started using compostable bags, that is the time when the quick service restaurant culture started increasing a lot. So people, restaurants like chains like McDonald's, Starbucks, all these or Domino's, Pizza Hut, they started coming into the picture, and they were using a lot of plastics like forks, knives, spoons, paper cups, plates, which were all in contact with food waste, food, right? So the moment a plastic is contaminated with food, then the challenge is you can neither recycle it as food nor can you recycle it as a plastic, or you'll have to clean the food waste, so that involves a lot of energy consumption in the process of cleaning it. So then the industry said, can we develop products which are like plastic, which have the functionality of a plastic, which is wet strength, performance, lightweight, but at the same time can compost like a food waste. And that is when this whole industry started to come in. The reason I'm bringing this out is it's important to understand that compostable plastics integrate into these zero waste initiatives and add a functionally enhanced value to the zero waste program, which is extremely important. So this is one important point I would like to bring here. Now, typically, compostable or biodegradable plastics represents the end of life, and unqualified use of this term biodegradable is wrong, misleading, and deceptive. So you cannot use the word biodegradable just like that, because that creates a lot of misconceptions or misinformation in the market. Second, as I told you in the last week talk, not all bio-based plastics are biodegradable. End of life can be recycling as well. It need not be only compostability. Third, marine and litter are not responsible end of life options. So just because something is biodegradable or compostable does not mean we can throw it as a litter or we can dump it into the seas and oceans, because it will not compost or biodegrade in those conditions. That is another important point. And composting, anaerobic digestion, or in certain cases, people are now starting to work on biodegradation in soil, which is for plasticulture. They are responsible end of life options. And then we have zero waste solutions, which is essentially the diversion of the waste from the landfill into a composting infrastructure. Now, unqualified claims for items entering the solid waste stream should be substantiated with scientific evidence that the entire item will fully decompose. There are lots of reports that are in the market where people talk about, let's say they run the study for 15 days and they say that 10% or 20% of my material is biodegraded. And so in the next 180 days, 90% would be biodegraded. So they do an extrapolation, which is not correct. So we cannot extrapolate a microbial assimilation mechanism because it's not a linear mechanism. The way microbes consume food source or consume the carbon in the food source is a completely different mechanism. It cannot be plotted in a certain pattern. It cannot be a linear pattern or a parabolic pattern or an exponential pattern. That's one. Second, using landfills and saying that my material would eventually biodegrade in a landfill or in a recycling, are making those claims are deceptive, because these locations do not present conditions in which complete biodegradation will occur. In fact, a landfill is a very poor repository for any biodegradation because the conditions are very anaerobic. There is no oxygen, and so whatever happens in a landfill, it's very slow, it takes a long time, and it continues to remain in a landfill. I mean, there have been cases where lot of instances of materials having been in landfills for several years and not changed their shape, size, or anything. So that's the second point. The final point is the phrase fully decompose into elements found in nature equates to a complete abiotic or biotic breakdown of the plastic into carbon dioxide, water, and biomass, which is what is needed or required from a scientific perspective to show that our material gets completely biodegraded into carbon dioxide, water, and biomass is a very important step in this whole biodegradation process. Now, there are some technologies, what we call as additive technologies. Sometimes there are cases where certain additives, it could be either an enzymatic additive or it could be a regular heavy metal or a regulated metal additive, which is made as a master batch and added at 1% or 2% levels into plastics to create oxo-degradable or photodegradable or enzyme degradable products. Now, there is nothing different in these technologies. The chemistry or the science behind an additive technology is very simple. The additive essentially breaks down the polymer chain and reduces the molecular weight of the polymer. So if you are starting with, let us say, a molecular weight of 100,000 or 150,000, once you put in the additive in the presence of sunlight, the additives could be simply radical initiators, which can start creating radical groups within the polymer and hence breaking down the chain into molecular weights of maybe 15,000 or 10,000. So to a layman, these bags or these products would look as if it is breaking down. But these oligomeric fragments continue to remain in the environment because the fundamental chemistry of the polymer, if it is polyethylene, the fundamental chemistry of the polymer does not change because of this additive. The additive only physically breaks it down and does not break it down biologically. So this is one important point. So these products are promoting these products under the name of biodegradable or fully biodegradable is misleading. So here is some pictures of what happens when some of these bags end up in a composting facility. You can see that oxo-degradable bags, they don't compost and they create a lot of litter within the composting facility. And they also break down into such small fragments that these broken down fragments are now very difficult to collect. So let's imagine you have a PET bottle on the road. Now, if it stays as a PET bottle, it's easier to collect. But then if this PET bottle becomes small fragments, then it becomes very difficult to collect, to recycle. So from one product, which is potentially recyclable, which is the plastic, by using oxo-degradable technologies, it gets converted into a product which now cannot be recycled and which creates a completely different set of challenges to manage. There are several cases captured by scientists, researchers across the world of lot of marine population using or thinking that these fragmented plastics and consuming it as a food source. So this is another challenge which is there. And these are essentially some pictures of these kind of microplastics which are consumed by some of the marine organisms, and thinking that this is a food because it's now so small, and then if humans start eating some of those fishes or whatever sea creatures, then that starts getting transported up the food chain, which creates a lot of challenges. Now here is another case I wanted to just explain on some of the biodegradability claims which are made inappropriately. So this is in 2002, this was a paper written in the chemical communications where they said a hypothesis was developed and successfully tested to increase the rates of biodegradation of polyolefins. And what they did was they took the polyolefin molecule, they grafted sugar, and when they did the biodegradation study, they found only a weight loss of only 2 to 12%, which means only the sugar was getting assimilated, the polyethylene chain was intact. And when the press heard about it, they made it a really sensational news by saying sugar turns plastic biodegradable, bacteria make a meal of sweetened polyethylene and polystyrene, which has now suddenly presented a completely different picture. Yes, there was a breakdown, but it was only the sugar grafted centers which broke down. The polyethylene chain remained intact, which is how it should be. So this is another misinformation, misclaim in the market, which has been more sensationalized because of the press. Similarly, there are claims which says that this material will completely 100% in soil compost oxo biodegrade in 9 months to 5 years. So when someone says 9 months to 5 years, then it means that there is no standard, and this is a problem. That is why in the test requirement for compostability, there is a clear statement that if the carbon in the material does not get converted to carbon dioxide in less than 180 days, then you can't call that as compostable. So sometimes these claims saying that over 10 years this will biodegrade, or over 15 years, or over 5 years it will biodegrade, is extremely misleading, and I would really throw a lot of caution into some of these claims. Now, we spoke about this. Bio-based is not the same as compostable. So bio-based refers to the beginning of life, which is the source of the carbon coming in the raw material, and then biodegradable or compostable refers to the end of life. So in this case, you can see you have TUV Austria, which offers an OK bio-based logo. You have a USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, which offers a certified bio-based product. And here is an example. Last time we discussed about Coca-Cola, where they use up to 30% plant bio-based materials. So bio-based is not the same as compostable. Now, having seen about the differences between bio-based and compostable, let's look at some of the drivers for sustainable packaging solutions. So there are essentially 3 drivers for some of these sustainable packaging solutions. The first is a legislative driver. What we mean by a legislative driver is that there is a national policy that requires, mandates diversion from landfill into managed end-of-life disposal systems. This is a legislative driver. The second is a corporate culture, where several corporations today and other private entities, they have a strong focus on environmental stewardship and recognize their desire for sustainable products and programs. For example, brands like Unilever, Nestle, Procter & Gamble, these brands have already taken commitments to move into bioplastics or carbon footprint reduction based technologies or end of life technologies. It need not be just composting, it could be recycling, it could be marine, it could be anaerobic, but there is a certain drive because this is more coming from a corporate standpoint. And the third driver is ultimately the consumer or the customer. And today consumers are more knowledgeable, they are more aware, and they demand that products that they buy need to be coming from a source which is sustainable, which requires sustainable packaging, and the technologies that used are sustainable, such as LEED, for example. So there are different drivers for a sustainable packaging solution. Now, when you look at packaging in the waste stream, essentially you have about a certain technology where, let's say, there is a process of recycling. Some product of it goes for landfilling. There is also some leakage into the environment, and a part of it also goes for incineration or recovery of energy. And so far, we have been working in the model of what we call as a linear packaging model, where there is a production and the product is made, it is then consumed and disposed. So this is the linear model by which the economy is running right now, from production to disposal. And the way we would like to create a model is create a circular model where we source the material. So here we have two options. We could use a petroleum feedstock or a fossil-based feedstock to source, or we could use a renewable feedstock to source. Now this material, the feedstock which is sourced, is then used for production. We make the product, we use the product, and then we have now several options how to create circularity. One, you can reuse it. We can reuse it. Number two, we can recycle it. So either we can recycle it back to the same product, or we can recycle it back to the source. Third is we can compost it. By doing this process, we are creating an effective after use plastics economy, number one. Number two, we are drastically reducing the leakage of plastics into other natural systems. The reason today the challenge with plastics is because, not because plastics are bad, it's just because plastics are getting leaked into systems which are very visible. So they are probably, everyone is thinking that the entire problem is because of plastics. No, plastics are only getting that label because of this leakage. And by doing this recycling, reuse and composting, we can reduce the leakage, which will enhance the image of this whole industry. And third is, we have to decouple plastics from fossilized feedstocks. This is very important. Today, polyethylene is formed by cracking of petroleum. But the same polyethylene can also be created using ethylene from any biological feedstock or a renewable feedstock. Of course, there are energy requirements that need to be considered. Today, probably getting ethylene from a petroleum feedstock is still the lowest cost option and the most efficient option. But then once we decouple the feedstock, then that provides more options to say, where is my ethylene going to come from? Is it going to come from a petroleum feedstock, or is it going to come from a renewable feedstock? Then you come back into this cycle to say, okay, I choose my feedstock and I produce what I want to produce. I use it, I either reuse it, recycle it, compost it, dispose it, but then I reduce the leakage. We are creating circularity. So the goal is, we have to move from a linear economy to a circular economy. And this is exactly what this summarizes. So when we talk about linear economy, I would like to again reiterate, from raw material, you make a product, you service, you provide it, you package it, you use it, you dispose it. And then at every point we can get circularity. For example, once we use it, reuse it. When we dispose it, recycle it. When we dispose it, regrind and use it. These are all mechanical or chemical ways of recycling. And then we have biological ways. From use it, you reuse it. If you want to dispose it, compost it. Once you compost it, you apply back the compost, you get the feedstock back, you use the product. So essentially, the concept, and this is where most brands and most economies are going to move into creating circularity. I think there are several ways by which we can create circularity in the ecosystem. Uh, Bioplastics is one of them. It's not the only way. You could do it with conventional plastics. If we effectively recycle, if we effectively even regrind and use it, is a beautiful way to create circularity. So this point is very important, that essentially whatever we try to do, if we can build the concept of circularity around it, I think to a great extent, the challenges with single-use disposable materials as a whole could be brought down significantly. And this is where the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is talking about the new plastics economy, where they are saying that eliminate unnecessary packaging is one first goal. Second is innovate to ensure 100% can be easily used, reused, recycled, or composted. And third, circulate the plastic by significantly increasing the amount of reused or recycled content. So this is where several customers or brands right now are looking at how do we add more recycled content into a product. So this adds value, that when we add more recycled content, we create more circularity. Now, I would like to just spend a little bit of time, and I think we are almost coming to the end, but I would like to talk a little bit about biopolymers in the market for those of you who are new in this area. As we now spoke about, there are two categories, bio-based and biodegradable. Typically, when you look at bio-based polymers, you have bio-based polyethylene, PET, polyamide, polypropylene, and by 2023, there is about 1.3 million tons of bio-based polymers, which are predicted to be available at commercial scale. And then when we talk of biodegradable polymers, we have very commonly used biodegradable polymers, which is PBAT, polybutylene adipate co-terephthalate, polybutylene succinate, polylactic acid, polyhydroxyalkanoate, starch, some of the other materials, which is also touted to be around 1,300 tons. So essentially the market is 1.3 million tons of both each of these materials. So the market is accepting both bio-based and biodegradable plastics depending on the application. If you are looking at a single-use disposable packaging, then ensuring that the biodegradability functionality is a part of that is important. While if you're looking at a more durable application, then having the material bio-based is important, because then you can create value by saying that I have moved away X% of my petroleum-based feedstock into a more renewable-based feedstock. So this is the value. And then this is a case where we saw last time as well of Coca-Cola. And what Coca-Cola has done is they have created this bottle, Dasani water bottle with a green cap, which is the same PET molecule, but then the ethylene glycol component, the carbon in the ethylene glycol component is coming from a bio-based feedstock. And then the value messaging that they are putting out is they save about 17 million metric tons of carbon dioxide from the environment by switching these two carbons from a petroleum-based feedstock to a renewable-based feedstock. So this is one brand which is doing globally, switching from a petroleum feedstock to a bio feedstock. And the end of life for this bottle is still recycling because it is the same PET molecule which is coming from a same so typically this ethylene glycol, while it comes from a petroleum resource, it is now coming from a bio-based, but the molecule of PET has not changed. It is still the same PET molecule. So it's important that this bottle, while it is bio-based, it is still end of life. It is not biodegradable or compostable. It is only recyclable, similar to PET. And this is that by 2020, they have made an assurance that most bottles that Coca-Cola makes and all their brands will be converted to plant bottles. I want to quickly go over some of the other areas. Ford has done some work on bio-based materials. They have worked on soybean oil-based technologies for car seating foam production. There are several food packaging applications which have come out in the world in bioplastics today. Transparent, biaxially oriented PLA films for packaging sandwiches. We have PLA coated paper cups for cold cups and hot cups for coffee and other beverages. Compostable laminate packing. This is a 3-layer laminate with paper, foil, and a compostable film, which is used for packing wafers and chips. This is a thermoformed form fill and sealed container with which Danone launched for some of their dairy products. Some industrial applications for packaging of industrial products like water purifiers and other things. These are some applications for bus seat covers. Lot of applications in the hospitality industry. These are more pretty common applications: carry-out bags, liner bags, bin bags, shirt bags, some of these applications that we see. Hybrid product applications like shampoo sachets, soap covers, some of these plates which are compostable are also coming out in the market. And a lot of work has gone in composting development. So this is a case of, this is one facility that I had the opportunity to be a part of the construction. This is a Godrej facility in Chennai, and they were able to construct, so this is the picture. They were able to construct this facility to manage all their food waste and other waste. So it was a very interesting development here. And then we have all these liner bags and some of these composting carry bags. So this is a kind of a nutshell on what I wanted to really bring out. And and maybe I can, if it's okay, can I just talk a few slides about NatureTech? Would that be fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So essentially, so NatureTech, we are a part of a global organization called Northern Technologies International Corporation, called NTIC. We were founded in 1970, and we have 3 businesses that we operate. The first 2 businesses are branded as Zerust, which is in the area of industrial packaging and oil and gas, and then NatureTech, which is into bio-based and compostable plastics. And at NatureTech, we do several solutions. We are into garment packaging solutions. We are into zero waste solutions like liners, shopper bags, cutlery, gloves, straws. We also do performance compounds, which are bio-based and compostable compounds tailored for certain specific applications. We have several compounds. Our products are certified with BPI and TUV Austria. We have film extrusion, profile extrusion, injection molding, and like I mentioned, integrated into zero waste products. We are again focused on innovation. We have R&D team in the US and in worldwide, which is working on product innovation. We also have a collaboration with Michigan State University for research on advanced bio-based materials. Uh, we also have facilities in India, China, Malaysia, and Italy.